As I said, I've been sitting with this knowledge and thoughts and inspiration and challenge, actually, for the last few weeks while I've been preparing for today. And if you will allow me, I would love to share 7 brief things that I personally took from her poem that I feel, actually, if you were to take her poem, and I have shared the words of it, and of course the link if you want to go back and listen again, it feels to me something that one could sit with for one's entire life. Actually, there's boundless truth and boundless wisdom therein. But these are 7 of the things that jumped out at me that I would love to share with you. It was interesting to me that she begins by inviting us to put down our old ways, unhealthy. She's thinking about things that are unhealthy, things that no longer serve us. And it's interesting because she says to open the door and then close it behind you. And I wondered deeply about that, why one would open and close at the same time. And I feel it's very apropos to where we find ourselves as a civilization now, and certainly in the United States with the things that we're grappling with at the moment. That sense of, we are indeed, history will show this, I'm sure, that we're sitting and nestled in a turning point, not just a tipping point, but hopefully also a turning point where we are stepping into a new era. And there are things, and there are old ways and old thought patterns and old behaviors and old customs, things that we didn't even question before, perhaps in our ignorance, or in ways where we weren't thinking carefully enough or thoughtfully enough. And these are now being brought into our face to grapple with and to welcome that new era and to see what is being left behind. Then she talks so clearly of gathering an awareness of our place in things. It's something which many traditions, I feel, take for granted, especially Indigenous traditions. And sometimes I know myself from my background, my growing up, we were never really taught that sense of ancestral line, that sense of being part of a continuum. And I feel the first time that I really grappled with this, and to sort of, I say grapple, but really sort of just to try to understand it from my own human perspective, is I spent my formative years in New Zealand, and I had a Maori teacher. The Maoris, of course, being the native people to New Zealand. And he always used to say, whatever we do, we have to remember that 7 generations before have made this moment possible. And we have to realize that our actions actually are moving 7 generations ahead. So to think carefully, not only about what we do, but how we do it. Then, of course, when in her reading in the video, it gets a laugh, which I think is interesting, but she talks about post-colonial jitters. And I know that so many of us, coming from the lives that we've lived, seeing what's happening in the world now, understanding, seeing with new eyes, seeing the changes that many of us have yearned for and longed for, and still yearning and longing for more. There is that sense of uncompletedness. And I know that I speak to many of my contemporaries who say, where is my place in this? I in a way, myself, my ancestors, we were part of the problem, and where do we go? How do we grapple with this? What is it that we must do or not do? And so it's interesting to me that she was talking about post-colonial jitters. And I wonder if she, of course, is speaking to her own people, her native family and community. But in a way, it spoke to me as well, that it's something that we're all now trying to find our way through and our place in it, and asking the questions and wondering about the answers. Then, of course, she talks about actively changing our relationship to the ecosystem. It's something, of course, that we are all, I think, deeply committed to. And she's asking us to be aware of the balance. And I love that she does so by talking about even the insects. And of course, as we know in the biosphere and the balance, it doesn't matter whether it's the largest elephant, the greatest whale, or the smallest insect, or even bacteria, they all have their place. And she's asking us to bring our awareness to that in a deeper way. And it's interesting to me because what I've begun to understand is that sometimes our patriarchal system can be very much, I will fix this. We will fix this. It's broken. How do we fix this? And some of my teachers have begun to challenge that mindset, even in my own life, about fixing. And it's interesting, she doesn't talk about fixing. She talks about humility and asking for forgiveness. And that being, as her channel says, the crux of change. To say, instead of I will fix it, actually to say, I'm sorry. And in reading it, I thought of the words of Hafiz, that great Sufi poet, who ends one of his poems by saying, well, he talks about getting down on a bended knee, actually, talking about his sorrow and his repentance and saying, asking this question, how can I be more kind? It's a profound question. Then she talks about the image of fire. And she talks about getting close to it and close to the center of it, which of course is where when I first started sitting with the poem, I thought, yes, this is where community gathers. This is where storytelling takes place. This is where a sense of belonging and warmth happens. One could also think of fire as being our spiritual nourishment. She's challenging us to go back inside to the center of all that is inside us and getting out and drawing our nourishment from that. But I also wondered about the sense of fire. A beautiful friend of mine who comes from the Christian tradition, actually, and he always said, very often we tend to the outer regions of the fire, putting up little fires here, there, but he said sometimes we need to work out what's at the middle. Where is the center of the fire? In other words, to ask what's at the core and what is mine to do? This is a big question for all of us to ask. There's so much to do. There's so much fire. There's so much that needs our tending and our attention. But at the very center, what is mine to do? Then the last two thoughts are these. The first is she asks and she challenges us to continue the work of healing. And of course, healing is not just an outward thing, but of course an inward thing. And we can really only heal others as much as we have healed ourselves. But the challenge comes to us that if we consider ourselves on that continuum again, it's healing, knowing that if we do that healing, we won't be passing the trauma and the pain on to the next generations. And perhaps that's one of the things that is ours to do. And finally, to go back to her words, the answer to all of this, she says, is love and gentleness and compassion. And she's actually saying, as I was saying earlier, it's not about fixing, it's about, she says, it's our spirit that will lead the way. So let me close by reiterating her challenge to us. Call upon those who love you. Isn't that lovely? Not call upon those who knew better than you, but call upon those who love you. Call your spirit back and recognize where it might be caught. And she says, in the corners and creases of shame, judgment, and abuse. And speak to ourselves, speak to our spirit, speak to each other, speak to land, speak to our nation, speak to our communities as we would a beloved child. Welcome it back from its wandering. Gather everything together. They will be, she says, happy to be found. And then give it new clothes. Our job is to bring together, consolidate, wash, bathe, tend to, love, be kind to, and then give it new clothes so that our lives, our communities, our land may indeed begin to look different. Thank you. I shared with you my brief musings, but there is perhaps no one better to share on these topics and ideas than Chief Perry, who himself is living this on a day-to-day basis, and to whom, as I said, I owe a great debt of teaching and inspiration. And Chief is invited today to respond to all that's come so far, but also to share with you what his community, not far from where you are actually in New Jersey, are doing, some of the victories that they have had, and his amazing vision for the future. So Chief, I would be so honored, and thank you.
Thank you. One of you, Nagiki Ai, Benmi Bakumakwa, Netelamapo, Wawashishi Odui Demi Wag. I'm Chief Perry of the Ramapough Lenape. We are the people who once lived in the our area. Our homeland once spanned from western Connecticut to eastern Pennsylvania, north of the Raritan River, and south nearly north rather to Albany. Today we barely encompass an area 7 square miles. It might be said that during the American Revolution, that without the help of the Ramapough, there literally would not have been any success in the American Revolution. That's quite a mouthful. But when you realize the only way that the then rebels could have possibly won the American Revolution was through control of the Ramapough Pass. By us withdrawing from the Iroquois Confederacy and allowing for the use of the Ramapough Pass, it literally eliminated any way for the British to resupply their troops except off the Atlantic or march them down through Canada. It's also important to know that the first 900 cannonballs fired in the American Revolution were made from Ramapough Lenape iron deposit. The fabled chain across the Hudson was made from Ramapough Lenape iron deposit. The Capitol Dome and the Lady of Freedom above the dome was made from Ramapough Lenape iron deposit. And this is important to know because the very first people that were enslaved by then our partners and the rebels were the Ramapoughs. That march towards quiet genocide has carried itself forward to this very moment. Unlike most other nations, all who've had terrible, terrible, terrible massacres, I think that we can honestly say that we are the living survivors of the American Holocaust. That's quite a mouthful, but if you look back and realize that the violence study that Adolf Hitler actually presented Mr. Ford an award for his work in the Violence Study New Jersey. The Violence Study was a work designed to identify subhumans. Our people were part of that study. The final of the study was that they took the findings, what they call technology, and applied it to our children in Europe. Today, we are still suffering from lack of where our children are being encouraged to drop out of school at 7th or 8th grade, manipulation of zoning, and a number of other things. But let us not dwell on what is, but where we are going, because we are also experiencing a renaissance of life and potential and possibility that not only is lifting of the Ramapough people, but I believe a light for the world that we can go forward in unity in a bigger way. One of the things that we have done, we've established an embassy, which would be the first embassy of indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere. Now, it's a virtual embassy, so you might say, well, what could a virtual embassy do? Well, number one, it can't be destroyed because we haven't invaded anything, nor do we plan to invade anything, except with ideas. To the initiatives that we've been able to join in recently. One is actually in Australia, where the Mongo people, I guess now we are calling them the Aborigines, have been set upon by the government. Not only have they declared their homeland world historical sites, they've asked them to move off their homeland. But I think more terrifying, they've actually taken their ancestors, some of their remains, and reburied them and not told the people where they put them. Can you imagine if we went over to your house, took your grandparents, and I put them over at my house and didn't tell you where I buried them? Well, they've done that to an entire nation in Australia. So what have we been able to do about that? We've at least been able to weigh in and provide, in a diplomatic means, our objections to what they have done as people in the Western Hemisphere, and also we've been able to garner through our friends and allies those who have the talents that are there to speak on their behalf to the government. One of the things that I find, one of the things I find so very important, and it's been said a number of times here, and I don't believe it can be said enough. Perhaps the most important thing that can happen right now is that we stand in unity and that we rise in unity. Any way that you look at it, any way that you approach it, without our allies, there is no voice. Trust me, there is no voice. You are not being listened to unless we stand together as human beings. Another initiative that we were looking at is the women's desk. And I think this is an extremely powerful position. Initially, we were looking at it in terms of trafficking, and we sort of come to a halt until we can regroup, because we realized the issue was not trafficking. The issue is trafficking in organs. Changes the dynamic of sort of stepping in a little bit differently. So what we're looking at there again is looking at to unify our people meaning all of us. Primarily the women are doing a lot of good work around North America, but I would say this again, going back to our allies, and we do have some very accomplished women on our desk, that with your heart bleeding, standing in the middle of, let's say, Montana with a cardboard sign is not resolving it. We need people with the business acumen that can go to Manhattan, Brussels, Rome, and walk into a CEO's office and speak the language they understand. If we don't have allies and understanding of that part of the world, the other part of the world is going to continue to be abused and destroyed. As a matter of fact, we're dealing with some people now that's actually used the term eradicate. But in a better way, I'd like to, if I may share a thought, a prayer, however you may want to look at it, but it speaks to what we've just been listening to and to the importance of each and every one of us. It says, Kishilamo Kwang. We ask that the wings of the eagle lift our sounds into the great mystery that all may know you. We ask all may have courage, that our people may have unity and be protected from all darkness. May the song lines and the sacred hoops of the nations once again be known at this time in this place. Let our fireplaces be portals of light and our song lines be to peace, to a new way, a real good way, a good way for all. May our grandmother, the earth, remember us and allow us to be unified as to help heal her from the many scars we have caused and from the many pains we have inflicted upon her, from the poisons we have left deep in her bosom to the waters of life we've made rancid in the desire for more. Let us now heed the moans of the sky that we yet continue to cradle us in hope. We may simply learn to be. Together, we offer up sounds of thanks, sounds which will bring a unity of light through prayer, that peace may prevail. We send up sounds that we may be remembered always as connected to the earth. We stand to ask that all may be remembered in their need and glory. Let no one forget the Creator, lest in darkness they are forgotten by the sacred. Keep us, Kichilamoklang, in the warmth of your love, and may you forever remember us in your dreams. And then I'm simply lifting up sounds that we may understand the importance of our unity, the importance that we stand together, and the importance that simply as we act every day, remember that our kindness, regardless how small, is the answer to someone's prayer. I thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video.